Hey guys, this is Xiaoyi here, and coming to you with a special video. We are now over 2 months into the Jade meta, and I'm gonna take a look at the unicorn, where unicorn stands, and what unicorn in the Jade meta looks like. So it's not really a scripted video. I know roughly what I want to talk about, so we'll just get to talking about it. I'll try and keep it short. So basically, there are, I would say, about three to four categories of decks in the Jade meta right now for Unicorn. The first is aggro Hisu Moritoride, HMT. And there are two main splashes which have prevailed, which are the Lion Splash and the Crab Splash. Let's look at the Lion Splash one first. I think that the Lion one is actually the strongest, but I'm not completely sure. Yeah. So what the Lion Splash has going for it is, and my examples of decks here are all taken, or nearly all taken from the recent Clan Wars, in which we are currently in round 1, and it's a super hype event. So if you are not checking it out, do check it out. Yeah, so most of them are from there, and it's open list. Okay. Lion Splash in HMT gives us strength in numbers and 4 Barrels Echoes. There's also other options such as Prepared Ambush, which lets you play lots of dudes from your provinces, discounted with Benefactor. But I think that may be a little bit too tricky. Here you can see the list I like the best here is Christian's list, which cuts all that fat out and just keeps it lean with all the good cards. There's also the possibility of playing Makeshift War Camp, which is pretty good as well, but it stands out as one of the best targets to be for attachment removal if you run Makeshift War Camp. So yeah, so that's one of the downsides of running that. Because other than that, you basically don't have stuff which is that good to remove. Yeah. Okay, so strength in numbers is really good. Some people are running strength in numbers together with Bonds of Blood. Both of them are, I think, for example, Azote's list. Strength in numbers together with, no, not this one, next one. There's 2 strength in numbers and 2 Bonds of Blood here. I can't remember whose list this is, but this is really strong because strength in numbers, unlike Way of the Open Hand, you can use it on the Stronghold province to break through on the Stronghold. It's basically just go all in and try and win early. You win turn 2, win on turn 3, but it still has surprising resilience into the maybe even turn 3, turn 4, because if you just get any opportunities, get breaks, if you manage to break 2 or 3, your opponent has to watch out for to make sure that he doesn't die on any turn, because the more turns that pass, the more fate you're accumulating, and eventually you can just go at the province and play like 2 or 3 play 2 4 Barrels Echoes to bring out Benefactor, and from Benefactor you play like 3 Cav reserves and join the fray and so on, and then they can't cancel everything. So that's the idea. So I think it's pretty strong and resilient. One of the top decks in Unicorn right now, if you're playing seriously, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, not that much more to say about it. Way of the Open Hand together with Strength in Numbers really makes it difficult for opponents to compete in the conflicts. And most decks right now in Jade are relying on favorable grounds to push dudes back into the conflict. Yes, okay. The rest of it is pretty standard. One of the big gains that we had recently is Moto Conqueror. Can't see it here, but it's 4 strength for 2 fate. Really good card for HMT. On the crab splash side, my favorite list is something like this, which also uses benefactor as the restricted list card. This list isn't exactly updated because it doesn't have Mortal Conquerors, but definitely because this list is a little bit older. I think it's from Nomadic, so probably you definitely want to update it with Mortal Conquerors, which are just excellent. You pull them out with Gunso, and then you're like, you're really really happy, right? So Crab, it pushes even further on the side of making your opponents not be able to participate in conflicts. You have Hiruma Skirmisher for the covert. Since pretty much you don't really want to run Yasamura, there is also the option of running Yasamura, which two of the players have done in their Crab Splash. So they play Yasamura together with Skirmisher. Yasamura together with Skirmisher. And together with Tessin, you can covert a lot of dudes. You can get multiple coverts in one turn. To me, I think that the Benefactor is really kind of too important, because Benefactor allows you to discount all your cards and like push through cards like Bonds of Blood and Cavalry Reserves join the fray. Push through cards where you really want to push cards through, like cancels and stuff. Yeah, so that's the kind of list that I like for Crab Splash. Not too much more to say. I think 3 Sneaks may be a bit too much here. There's some cards that I like from here. I can't remember which ones. Oh yeah, here I'll probably maybe cut a few sneaks. Maybe cut 2 sneaks and play the extra swords, extra fine katana, which this list is cutting. I think the fine katanas are just good cards. Yeah, just play more of those. Yeah, maybe Censure 2 is a bit optimistic, but yeah, something like this I think is really strong. Another direction that Unicorn has right now is the Shiro Shinjo. There's a variety of Shiro Shinjo decks, which is really interesting. So one of them is Swarm, and this list was shown to us by Dirty Deeds. He showed us the power of Swarm, which is really interesting because I don't think there's any other deck in the game which is like this, other than like Krabbits for a while, where you really just played a ton of dudes onto the board. But yeah, this is kind of a very different type of deck, because you're playing a lot of small dynasty boys, no real big dynasty boys except for Benefactor, and you're playing 3 Western Winds. So you review, explore while breaking, and then you get more money. You play Western Winds to find lots of dudes. Especially the dudes that you're really looking for are like Utaku Infantry, which scale the more dudes you have. And what else? You want to find more Kan Blood Benefactor. You also have the one-off Swift Magistrate to get through towers. So these are really, really strong. You also have surprising amount of political force in Worldly Shiotomi, which gets activated with by Curve Blade, of course, and Young Warrior. So you can see here, this is like two political, but it often goes to 4, and then Young Warrior is 3. Yeah, so you actually have quite a decent political force as well, together with Utaku Infantry. But he's also still running the usual captive audience. So I think this is a really strong way to play Shiro Shinjo as well, in a very aggressive style. You don't win the game as quickly as you do in HMT if everything goes well, since you only have 2 conflicts instead of 3. But it is still very strong. It's very hard to interact with, because unlike in HMT, where you often play some big guys with Join the Fray and Cavalry Reserves to get some big boys, and then you like try and like put more attachments on them, and then your opponent can bow them or play like Fate Worse Than Death, this sort of stuff. But if you Fate Worse Than Death one of 8 guys in Swarm Shiro Shinjo, that's not very effective. So yeah, you have just a lot of stuff, and it's very hard for your opponent to interact with you when you get your stuff going. So I think that's a strong way to play aggressive Shiro Shinjo. Next, we also have another thing in the same vein, but it's Lion Splash. So Lion Splash for greater glory. One thing I want to talk about here is another a few other key cards that you get to exploit when you're playing Swarm Shiro Shinjo is Ujik Tactics and Unfulfilled Duty. So Unfulfilled Duty really lets you unbow a whole army and go in for the second conflict. Yeah, Ujik Tactics just gives you a tons of military, which is hard to interact with because they can't just like for shame individual dudes and bow individual dudes because you still have a lot of military strength on other dudes. Yeah. So here, in this deck here, it also tries to swarm with lots of Western Wind and lots of dudes, and then it tries to resolve for greater glory, which I think is also a strong way to play the deck. Also, Dirty Deeds had a version of Lion Splash Swarm Shiro Shinjo. For greater glory here, actually, it's not something that they have to resolve in order to win. It's a big bonus if they get to resolve it, but if it gets cancelled, then it's actually still okay because the deck is still resilient. Yeah, the deck is actually still resilient. Here they get to play Prepared Ambush with Benefactor to really spit out all your dudes with the Western Wind. I think this is also a fine way to play. The extra fate from Shiro Shinjo lets you spit out a lot more dudes and also fate the dudes that you spit out. But yeah, pretty good. On my side, I've been playing like a mid-range control Shiro Shinjo. It's a little bit different way to play. I'm surprised no one else has played it yet. But yeah. Okay, so this is probably like the fairest kind of deck where you're just trying to play good cards. You're just trying to win the mid-range, win the value war. So you're actually just trying to use the extra fate from Shiro Shinjo to stick more characters on the board to win the longer game. Right, so the characters you kind of try to play on the board would be things like Shahai, Dayu, Benefactor, and Kyora and Kamoko. So you have 5 dudes who you kind of want to stick on the board and give you value over time. Shahai gets discounts for invocations. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, just reasonable stats. Covert she's not fantastic, but she gets discounts for invocations. And also Shinsei's for attachment removal to compete in a longer game. And of course, in matchups where your opponent isn't playing 3 Fawning Diplomats, Hante, the Emperor, is a really strong way to win a lot of games in Jade right now. I think it's a very strong card. Yeah, against a lot of decks, just resolving a Hante 38 with like 3 or 4 fate on it will just win you the match. So a lot of the times when you play Hante, play the Emperor, you just don't really use the redirect power and just hold your opponent hostage. Yeah, and every time you're just getting so much value, yeah, and holding on to the favor. Some other stuff that you're trying to play to get value is 3 Baka. So Bakas are really, really good. They dominate the military conflicts when you actually get them to stick. Invocations, which are also really strong when you have characters who stick on the board for quite long. In this deck, you're trying to play characters with like +3, +4, +5. Then you stick invocations on them and try and dominate the board. Yep, Ancient Masters are here also to contest favor, because favor is very important in a lot of matchups, especially if you want to play your Emperor. That's pretty much it. You have 1 Mushin to cancel random stuff like Noble Sacrifice, and that's pretty much it. Press to Ibisu is a nice tech card in most of the Shiro Shinjos right now. It helps you a lot against, for example, Honor Lion and Dishonor Scorpion, and Dishonor Crab as well. So yeah, I think this is a reasonable way to play as well. Then we also have the Dreamers, who are playing Golden Plains Outpost (GPO). Right now in the clan war, only Dirty Deeds and KC are playing this, but it seems like KC has caught on to the GPO train from Dirty Deeds. And although it looks kind of gimmicky at first, I think actually it's quite a reasonable way to play as well. Although I'm not sure whether it's as strong as the other two, but it's definitely got its advantages. So why do you want to play Golden Plains Outpost, which is widely considered the worst stronghold in the game? Well, some of the advantages you get when you play GPO would be you get to play, you get to take advantage of Twilight Rider, which is a strong card in the deck. You also take advantage, well, your Nimble Noyans get better. The card that fetches Nimble Noyan, which is our Tanzanite, also gets better. The Swift Magistrate also gets some boost, since you can bring it into a second military conflict. Even when it's bound, it still does its job to nullify towers. Yes, so it does have quite some things going for it. It also has multiple stables. Yeah. We also have things like Diversionary Maneuver, which works together with Nimble Noyan. So you can Diversionary Maneuver, and then your dudes go home. You can bring them back into the next, into the new conflict with Diversionary Maneuver, and they are still contributing since you have Nimble Noyan. Yeah, so I think that's a strong way to play the game as well. You have captive audience, so you try and kind of like push aggressively and force breaks, right? So when you attack with just one dude, and then you see what they defend with, right? If they defend with if they under defend, then you can, for example, Way of the Open Hand and just get an easy break, right? If they over defend with 2 dudes or 3 dudes, then you can play Diversionary Maneuver and yeah, and then break anyway with your other dudes, right? And then if they under defend, you can also push in your whoever you have at home with GPO. Yeah, so Twilight Rider is probably the main thing that you want with GPO, because it allows you to unbound a dude every turn. You just move it to a conflict, you move it in on a mill conflict, and then you get the unbound every turn, which is pretty good. So you want to play this Twilight Rider probably like +3 most of the time. And yeah, so that's pretty nice. I think it's a reasonably strong way to play the game as well. Yeah. So yeah, it's very tricky, but it's also very hard to play this deck correctly, because like for example, there's a lot of things you have to consider, like making sure Noyan is active on the right turns. You want Twilight Rider to move in, and when he moves in, you want the unbound to be effective. Like, so sometimes the sequencing of your conflicts needs to be considered for this. Yeah, and you want Swift Magistrate to not get in the way of your other cards, some of which are likely to be fated. And then yeah, things like that. Yeah, so it's pretty hard to play it well, I think. But if you can play it well, it seems like it can work pretty well as well. I think KC has a Dragon Splash, but I don't think it's as strong. Some of the things you can do with Dragon Splash is Phoenix Tattoo to move in whoever has Phoenix Tattoo into a conflict in which you're winning. But Phoenix Tattoo is really a double-edged sword. Sometimes if your opponent just can win the conflict, then it's pretty bad for you sometimes. Yeah. So I think I like the Lion Splash one more. Ujiaki's Offer is a nice card as well to to make your opponents be unable to participate effectively in the conflicts, right? Like for example, you can initiate the political conflict, and then during the political conflict, you ujaki offer them, and then you can captive audience it if necessary, and like you activate GPO to bring your dudes in, right? Yeah. Interestingly, Tetsuko is the RL card of choice here, restricted list card of choice. Also, Tetsuko gets a boost from GPO since you can move in bout to conflict to still have an effect ongoing. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So we have HMP aggro in Crab Splash and Lion Splash. I think I like the Lion Splash really well, really good. I think that's probably one of the strongest ones. Then we also have Swarm Shiro Shinjo, which I think is really strong. I think mid-range Shiro Shinjo, mid-range control is reasonable. It's a good way to play as well. And then here we have the Dreamers who play GPO. Yeah, so I think the meta in Jade is still pretty good. You don't have crazy decks. Some crazy decks that you could have in Imperial, like Fireworks or L's crazy tents, but crazy L's tents. But yeah, I think it's still pretty good, and we'll look to see more as the Clan Wars develops. Yeah, hopefully I wasn't rambling too much. That's the end of it, and thanks for joining. Bye bye.